The Nature of Kundalini by George Sidney Arundale, read by Dave Marsland of Cardiff Theosophical Society. This piece is an extract from George Sidney Arundale's book Kundalini, an Occult Experience. The Nature of Kundalini. What is Kundalini? The Sanskrit word has been variously translated generally by those who have no real conception whatever as to the function of that which it is the label. It seems that the root of the word is the verb kund, which signifies to burn. This is the vital meaning, for Kundalini is fire in its aspect of burning. But we have a further explanation of the word in the noun kunda, which means a hole or a bowl. Here we are given an idea of a vessel in which the fire burns. But there is even more than this, for there is also the noun kundala, which means a coil, a spiral, a ring. Here we are given an idea as to the way in which the fire works, unfolds. Out of all these essential derivatives, the word Kundalini is born, giving creative femininity to the fire, serpent fire as it is sometimes called, the feminine creative power asleep within a bowl, within a womb, awakening to rhythmic movement in uprushing and downpouring streams of fire. It is a word signifying the feminine aspect of the creative force of evolution, which force in its specialised and more individual potency lies asleep, curled up as in a womb at the base of the human spine. Its awakening is fraught with utmost danger, indeed disaster, save as the individual concerned is in a position to keep it under full control. And such power to control comes only when the higher reaches of the evolutionary way are being approached, reaches still out of sight as regards the vast majority of mankind. Now and then, however, glimpses of Kundalini in action are vouchsafed to the student who is content to watch and not to grasp, and the following descriptions are of Kundalini at work before the eyes of such a student, he interpreting what he saw as best he could, often no doubt faultily. The experiences were interspersed with some authorised experiments, and while it is as impossible as it is unlawful for one student to share with any other his experiences and experiments in any degree of fullness, it being still more impossible and unlawful for any indication to be given as to the mode of awakening Kundalini. The mode varies substantially according to the soul note of the individual, yet now and then is permitted a sharing of the atmosphere of these experiences and experiments, at least in some measure. It is hoped that the result will be a subtle awakening of the larger consciousness, of the shadow of a shade of the spirit of cosmic consciousness, so that there may arise a fragrance of what may be called spiritual ozone, in the exhilaration of which the reader contacts a self of his self, larger than any he has so far known within the limitations of his present incarnation. He achieves a release, a freedom. He becomes like a bird which has at last begun to find the use of its wings. He flutters, even if he cannot yet fly, and in that very fluttering he begins to distinguish between the real and the unreal, between the true and the false, between the useful and the useless, between the beautiful and the ugly. And though he remains unable constantly to use the discrimination thus aroused, at least he knows, he experiences, and sooner or later the knowledge experience becomes steady activity. When it begins so to do, then is the time for those first feeble stirrings of Kundalini, which shall eventually release in him forever the fire of life, and place upon him the crown flower of eternal kingship. We all are far away from kingship, but perhaps the experiences and experiments herein set forth may be intimations, however faint, of a fragment of the nature of royal living, and thus give courage to endure and courage to conquer. I have not edited these experiences and experiments so as to make them intelligible, still less conventionally rational. I have left them just as they came, with only slight modifications. Their value does not lie in their appeal to the reason, but in their recognition as a reflection of something which the earnest student will know to be his as well. He will see in the very incomprehensibility of much that is described as something towards which he feels he too is irresistibly moving. However fantastic they may seem, yet somehow he perceives that they are fantastic not because they are untrue, but because they are still too true for him. I hope that when they may seem absurd, he will feel that their absurdity lies only in their being so utterly foreign to all normal experience and experiment, not in their being nonsense. Even if they may appear nonsense to his limited sense, perhaps to some they may seem more sense, and his sense more nonsense. Let the descriptions be read lightly, not with the mind, but with the intuition, not with an already set conviction as to what can and cannot be, but with the mind, the heart and the will open to all things. Let the reader be fully aware that the unbelievable is by no means necessarily untrue, and that the consciousness we call I, with its various functionings, physical, emotional, mental and beyond, is infinitely more extraordinary than ever our wildest dreams could envisage. Accounts of experiences and experiments referred to in this piece can be found in other postings of Kundalini and Occult Experience by George Sidney Arundale.